Welcome to You Belong in the Room, a podcast that brings the conversations I'm privileged to have in my daily life to a wider group of women because I know more women need access to them. Today's conversation explores what's driving us beneath the surface. Women are highly capable, and we all carry pressure, emotional burdens, and patterns that began long ago. We'll examine the emotional blueprint, how early experiences shape how we show up in our relationships, decisions, and at home. How can we tell when we're reacting from the past instead of leading from the present? What are we modeling for the people around us? You can't change what you haven't identified. This episode is about awareness, it's about self-work and emotional leadership. You belong in the room, and sometimes the very first room to understand is the one at home. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult a qualified professional for your specific circumstances. I am so lucky to be joined today by Dr. Tina Montreuil, who I had the pleasure of meeting not that long ago, but it feels like we've known each other for quite a while. So, Tina, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel so privileged to be
Me
here.
Me too. Yeah. And before we get into it, please, you'll do a better job at this. Introduce yourself. Yeah. Tell everyone a little bit about your background, your research, and how do you spend your days? What do you think about?
Yeah. So just briefly, I'm a small town girl living in a big city like Montreuil. I am now a researcher, and I'm also a university professor. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and started my professional career as a clinician and sort of fell into research just because of my inquisitive mind, and my inquisitive mind that wanted not to just provide people opinion when I'm seeing them and when I'm counseling them, but really wanting to rely on evidence and empirical data. So I specialize, I would say, in child development. That's really what I do at the core. I've worked in schools, several Montreal school boards, mainly Anglo. And I've also worked in the hospital settings. So I work with work with young children. And over the years, if you're working with children, by default, you're going to end up working with their families and their parents and their caregivers. So I've really developed an interest in better understanding what family dynamics, family predictors, just family systems, and how that affects and shapes who children are. So that's why in the recent years, I've been working a lot in the perinatal space, so prenatal and early postpartum. So really working with families and better understanding the exposures that children have from a very early age, the womb being the first environment in which they'll grow, to really support families to become just better individuals first. And then by default, being better at anything else that they do, of which one of the hardest job ever is, maybe we'll get to talk about it, becoming a parent. Yeah. Much easier to procreate than it is to parent well. Yeah. But it starts at the base by being just healthy individuals, mind and body. For me, I want to help people. So that's where the clinician comes in, like wanting to really help people become their better self, their best self possible. They're not going to see a psychologist at a private clinic. So a lot of reasons why some people don't seek help. There's a lot of stigma sometimes, some fear. Change is fearful. Change is scary, right? I should say it creates fear. It's scary. So therefore, perhaps hearing this podcast, they'll feel empowered, open, or have a different vision of what it is to change. Change doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a bad person. The focus can be, I want to change because I want to become just a better version of myself. Yes. So hopefully, people that hear this podcast can maybe go from a step of feeling shameful, feeling, guilt. It doesn't make us move forward. So maybe hopefully we can let go of the guilt, let go of the shame, and just say, you know what, I can do this.
I love it because not only is your work so important from a substance content perspective, but I love the way you see it. Yeah. I love your angle. I mean, I love the goals that you have for what you can achieve which is helping everyone. And I think
Yep.
that this whole value of growth and self-improvement
Mm-hmm.
can be a core value for everyone.
Absolutely.
And kind of what you're touching on is what underlies the reasons why it might not be.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can uncover, I mean, there's so much goodness here.
Yeah.
I can't wait to
Yeah.
get into it. So let's not delay anymore.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what is the idea of having an emotional blueprint?
Yeah.
How do you define that?
Yeah. So we're the byproduct of many things, right? A lot of the times we react a certain way, yes, because of who we are, but we've become this way over the years. It's almost as if, we're double-faced tape on the outside of us, and we're really collecting bits and pieces of experiences. And so the idea is that, a lot of the times we have this mindset, well, I think most of us are like, well, my parents were like that, or this is how I was brought up, so this is who I am. And so part of my answer is, yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But there's more to that. It doesn't have to be or to remain like that if we feel that there's a need to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that, for example, it could be that, it goes as far as our childhood. And it could also be that at one point, maybe in our teens, we experience something. It could be bullying, it could be various things, right? But we're basically, I think what we need to see is that I'm not just a bad person, or I don't just have bad reaction, and that makes me less than someone else. We don't control those things. A lot of the things that we are today, are, especially if they're related to our childhood, we had no sense of agency on that. What I tell people is that, well, now you're an adult, and sure, you experience things that shaped who you are today. But if there are things that, you realize that you no longer like, it doesn't have to remain that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've talked about like how we can almost see this as a spring cleaning things, right? Where there's a pile to keep, sort of unsure. Maybe I can sort of repurpose this, change it somehow, and certain things that I literally want to give away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true of our life. So this question of emotional blueprint, yes, it's related to our childhood and our life experiences. But now, if we want to stop and evaluate, we can approach it in that way that I was telling you. We do have a sense of agency on certain things as an adult. And so we can intentionally sort of change or improve or but it starts with a reflection, right?
And sometimes, I mean, what I'm hearing is, we all we have our childhood. It shapes who we are. All of our experiences do. And then eventually we end up in moments, I think.
Yeah.
They could be relationships.
Yep.
They could be career, professional moments that challenge us.
Yes.
And sometimes
They
those are the
conflict
most
us.
useful moments.
Yes.
To help uncover ourselves.
Yes.
You tell us
it could
a
be
bit
people's
more.
comments, but I always say, like, most of us are so busy, and this is how life is, especially if you live in an urban area, we're busy. And oftentimes we won't really stop ourselves to just kind of really feel, just to kind of like, how am I feeling right now, right? So I always tell people, or sometimes we feel bad emotions and we're kind of repressed, and we find also we become very skilled with all sorts of behaviors to compensate with them. And I often tell people, like, let's say if it's certain patterns of abuse or consumption or these types of things, and I tell people, well, this is just your brain naturally trying with whatever means it has now to just preserve you. So we shouldn't necessarily see those behaviors as I'm a bad person. It's what your brain at that moment with the means that you had went to. We need to really allow these emotions to surface, because I always tell people, if you don't know where, like, how do you know you're lost? Unless your GPS is turned on, if you're in an area that you don't know where you're at, right? If I'm in a new city or in anywhere and I don't know where I am, How else am I going to know that I'm lost unless I have my GPS on, right?
And I'll never forget the thing you told me
Yeah.
about what we naturally are predisposed to do when
Yeah.
we're lost versus what we should do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we find ourselves lost in a forest, Tina
Yes.
taught me.
Well, and
right?
a good colleague of mine actually taught me that. I have to give him credit. But the reality is that when we're lost, let's say if we use the analogy of our life as a forest, certainly there's part of that forest that I'm familiar with because I entered somewhere. I foresaw a path. I walked through. So there are elements of that forest that I'm familiar with, but a lot of it that I'm not. And usually our sort of visceral reaction is that if we get lost, we're going to start like frantically, right, in panic to try to find our way out. And again, that's very sort of, it's good. Like my brain is preparing me for action.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm lost, I'm likely not going to be very reflective. I'm ready to fight if there's some sort of, obstacle or predator or some sort of animal that's there. Having that sort of panic mode, frantic is good because it'll probably ensure that I'm able to think swiftly to just protect myself in that moment. But if my goal is to find my way out of that forest, I need to take a step back and start looking. Yeah. Start looking at my surroundings. Start maybe even using my senses, like hearing, seeing, smelling. Where am I? Was I here before? And so I often give people the analogy that your emotions is like a GPS. Mm-hmm. That's what you use to let you know that something is wrong. How do I know that the blueprint that I have is causing me issues in where I am now in my life? Yeah. And so I have to allow myself that space to feel those emotions because that's really sort of me looking, oh gosh, I'm really lost. But I have to first accept the fact, oh gosh, I'm lost. Yeah. Because if you don't accept the reality that you're lost, you're unlikely to be able to get out. It's just a different level of consciousness. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's the same thing. So it's kind of like not qualifying. Is it bad that I'm lost? Is it good? How is that going to help me get out? Right? Yeah. My focus should be, where do I want to go?
And normalizing, just normalizing moving forward.
Absolutely.
Normalizing progress.
Oh, but I'm so much more lost than someone else. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's where I talk about the blueprint as well. It also, where did you start? Yeah. Some people, they make a little bit of progress in comparison to someone that made a lot, but they have very different determinants. They start from a much lower place. So that's the thing. If your focus is on oh, where did I start? Others have it better than me. You're never going to be able to achieve the best version of yourself because you're just looking at someone else's, and you're actually using different tools. It's kind of like using, I don't know, a tablespoon and comparing with this teaspoon. They're two different measures, right? They're not the same.
It's also hard to know what people are experiencing.
Exactly, because, we don't fully know. Yeah. But I think this is why, you should never just say, oh, it's just this much, or I just made this much, or here's where I am in comparison to someone else, because we don't know. So I think, starting being less judgmental about the process. Yes. And just focusing on what it is that you want to be and believing that that's achievable. So I guess my focus is always how can I get that person to believe? Yeah. What can I say? How can I say it? Right? Because I do believe that that's possible.
Do you feel like there's something about women suppressing more our emotions?
Well, research shows that women do feel emotions more than men do. Does that mean that some men don't and some men can't? No, it's just the way we are wired. First of all, women, and that probably has a lot to do with it, but our hemispheres are lateralized. That means they're connected, which means that probably we can bring in more of our emotions into our reason.
Oh, interesting.
Then perhaps men have that capacity, which could explain as well why some men are like, how can you be so, I don't know, sometimes we've all been at a place sometimes with men and saying how can you stay so calm, when this is happening, which I think again on an evolutionary basis, because, we partner, it can be a great thing that sometimes, that's how they are and that's who we are. And that's why I always go back to, let's really fully embody who we are as females, as women, as individuals, because if we do that, we can really bring something complementary to others.
I love your point about the usefulness of them,
Absolutely.
their tools,
Yes.
and their ability to guide us.
Yes.
Like I know that my emotions over the last however many years, I think I can feel the uncomfortable ones,
Mm-hmm.
and don't push them away. I'm not as quick to push away
Yes.
my uncomfortable emotions
Yes.
because they're so informative.
Absolutely. Some of our work has shown, some of the students that I work with as work has shown that, sometimes suppression can serve a purpose. So we shouldn't that's the thing. We shouldn't make something always black and white, because if
Yeah.
I'm feeling intense levels of depression and anxiety, suppression for example, may make me say, you know what, I need to go see a psychologist. Let's work on it. You can't be mindful. You can't be, for example, making use of good and adaptive strategies if you're, again, in that panic mode in the forest,
Right.
and you're lost.
Right.
Being able to suppress those emotions helps me sort of say, okay, I'm lost. I need help. How can I get out of here? Right. But if I'm really in a panic mode, I can't do that.
And I also wonder, how do we know when we're acting based on our emotional blueprint, our past?
Yeah. And
how can we tell when it really is something we're feeling in the present?
Yeah. I would say, I would say when you're not okay with the outcome, right? Because a lot of the times, we might say it's that person's fault. And it may be that's person's fault. But sometimes it's maybe saying, okay, I'm not happy with how this turned out. I kind of have to maybe accept that I may have had a role to play in that negative outcome. I realized that I had a role to play. I think going back and understanding why I reacted that way, it's kind of like not putting all the blame on our childhood, but it's kind of saying, well, I reacted that way because of maybe some unresolved issues. And I think just having a perspective, it's not just me, it's many things.
Yeah.
Can maybe bring us more easily to a place of self-compassion.
Yeah.
It's more complicated or more complex than that.
I feel like taking maybe this sounds cliche, but taking the blame and the shame at it's not my parents' fault.
Yeah, no.
And it's not my fault, but we all are the product of all these experiences and tendencies, and what can we do to kind of be curious and observe them and hopefully learn.
Yeah. And again, back to the question of emotions, is I think we talked about that at some point. I get some people in my office, or even people that I, not necessarily just in my office, as a therapy, but some people that I interact with, and they're like, I don't know, I just feel unfulfilled. I just feel unhappy. I'm depressed all the time, or I'm always angry. I'm always bitter with the people I love the most, my kids. When I think about it, say what my evening is going to be like when I get home, either my partner, my family, my sisters, brothers, or my kids. I envision I'm driving, I'm envisioning what my evening is going to be like. And then I get home and it's totally not what I envisioned. I ended up yelling, storming out of the kitchen, going to my room, and then the kids or my husband or my boyfriend, whatever, my sister went to bed, and I didn't even talk to him and apologize before. And that's not, how did it end up that way? I totally foresaw something different. And I always tell people well, if you're feeling so unhappy or so stressed all the time, usually, not, there's always exceptions, but I always tell people, what are your values? Because it could be that, your emotional expression is basically an indication. It's like a symptom, a physical ailment. My elbow hurts, my leg hurts. It's something deeper, right? Your emotions are what you feel on an emotional level, the feeling that you feel let down, you feel unsatisfied, discontent. Typically, it's a disarray. It's a lack of harmonization between, at the core, what my values are and the choices and the behaviors and the actions that I make on a daily basis. So if at the core for me is, for example, to be healthy physically, but that I make poor food choices, I get an opportunity to exercise, but I prioritize let's say work or something else over physical activity, well, for sure, I'm not going to necessarily realize that maybe I'm not harmonized or in sync with my values and my behaviors. But the emotional compass, which is always on the negative polarity, and again, it's not, these emotions are not, we label them as being negative, but anxiety, anger, they're valid emotions.
Yeah.
They signify something. We have to give them space. It's what I do with those emotions. If I am an alcoholic as a result of that, if I am someone that can be physically harmful to people that I care about, that's not right. It's a misuse of, or channeling of those emotions. But if I can use, there's a whole bunch of people that live with those emotions, strong emotions on a daily basis, and they make alternative choices with those emotions. They choose to channel them differently, right?
I am sitting here grinning because
yes,
I have personally experienced like exactly what you're talking about, and have been able, well, before creating Granite Family Office,
yes,
I had felt very strong negative emotions. And
professionally,
professionally,
or generally
but
speaking.
that kind of bleeds into the rest of your
Yes,
life.
absolutely does.
But the source of those negative emotions ended up causing me such overall discontentment that it ended up being entirely about my values.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get over what an impact it had on my well-being.
So you're basically, are you recognizing now in hindsight that you didn't realize what your values, your core values were, really? Sometimes we don't stop and do that.
Well, my environment changed.
Yes. Okay.
Is what happened.
Yes.
But I hadn't ever done the work to identify them.
Yes.
So,
and most people don't actually, like, it's not like you had never done it. Like, most people actually go through life without necessarily doing that.
Yes.
And a lot of the times we see people at work or on Instagram or whatever, we're like, oh, they look so happy, so centered. They're probably just people that are in alignment. They choose,
or that's like 1 second of happiness.
And yes, absolutely, that's true as well. But that's also what you're seeing in that reality, that social media reality. But I mean, generally speaking, I would say that
alignment.
That if you can work at realizing that you're not just feeling emotions and you have no control on that over them, is that there's a misalignment somewhere, just like you would have for your physical body, right?
Yeah.
There's something on an emotional level, a psychological level, where you are probably making daily choices. You're staying in a job, you're staying in a relationship, you're befriending someone, you're doing something that is basically not feeding your core values.
Yes.
So you're starved emotionally.
Yes.
Because your behaviors is what feeds, it's the actualization of your values.
Yes.
Your values are there.
Yes.
But in order to get to fulfillment, it's through your actions.
Yeah.
And so usually there's that misalignment between the two. The whole basis of that, huge part of it, was teaching children, like, what are your core values? What are your family's values? What are, let's say, your maybe your environment's values? And then at the core here, there's a little bit of an enmeshment of both. Like, what are your values?
Yeah.
Your family, your school, for example, your friends. And part of that, you're a byproduct of all these environments, I think.
But being able to live in alignment with your values is
key.
What allows you to be emotionally well. I think
absolutely
you just put your finger like exactly on it.
It's not trying to tame the emotions, no longer feel the emotions, numb them. It's just your emotions will adjust once your core values are identified and your behaviors align. Then you'll have the sort of more healthier, adapted byproduct of that emotional health. And so does that mean that it's always going to be perfect? Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
But it's just that, you're healthier. So when something emotionally happens, we all experience, it could be loss, it could be disappointment, deception, despair. Well, we're at a better place. I was giving you the analogy of the financial health, right?
Yeah.
Well, the emotional health, I feel works the same way.
Yeah.
This is what you have to diversify the means by which, you sort of build your emotional well-being, because when trouble happens, well, you've got savings, you got something in the bank, right? That's the whole point about living a healthy life as well, like with good values and good morals. So there's many facets of what core values are.
Yeah.
Morality is one of them. Lifestyle is one of them, right? So it's a compound of all that.
It's relevant in every area of your life.
Absolutely.
Right? So professionally, in your couple, in your family, your original family, with your children.
Yeah.
And I think your ability to show up.
Yes.
And model, as we talk about, and the importance of taking care of that for yourself so that you can do better for those around you.
Yes. And I think doing better to those who are around you is also sort of being at a place where consciously and intentfully you're yourself. So that means that, like back to the pile before,
so good.
Like our blueprint, like I tell people. So maybe there's things about your childhood, the way you were brought up, that your parents did. Now that and I think a lot of us are, we don't need to become parents to be confronted with that. But certainly parenthood will confront us with those generational sort of blueprints and patterns. Because then you're like, hold on one second. Do I want to raise my children with the things that I was brought up with? And then also sometimes it's like, you forgot that you were like that. Then you become a parent. You're like, hold on one second. I didn't even realize that I had internalized these, my parents' patterns so much.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where one of the pieces, sometimes we're living to please others. So we're like our value, my behaviors is like, it's actually my mom's or my dad's core value. But I'm executing, making choices on a daily basis, choosing a career, choosing, to do certain decisions in my family, like it could be religion, it could be anything else, based on who my parents were. But this is not my value now. Maybe my value is a bit less rigid with regards to maybe religious beliefs or financial decisions. Like my mom's not a risk taker at all, but I feel like I want to take a bit more risk, right? Well, then it's becoming an issue. So this is why sometimes it's like doing the exercise, like, okay, now I'm realizing this is how I was brought up. This is my blueprint. Okay, this I'm going to keep. This I think is a good value, like exercise, healthy living. My parents were very active. I love that. I'm going to keep that. This part about, like, for example, I don't know, it could be whatever. I'm not going to name anything, but that in my life, I don't want that. Like I know consciously I don't want to, it could be, again, religious, could be financials, could be something as simple as saying like, family traditions where every Sunday we have to go eat at someone else's house. I don't want that. That's too stressful. Well, you take it out. And then sometimes it's like, I won't throw it out, but like I need to dilute that it's too rigid. It's too, we talked about a few examples. So it should be like that. So that's one of the ways we have to sort of get to a place where we are, we're making choices that are ours, right? And we're teaching our kids that as well, right? And that's the hard, because if you don't let go of the way that you're doing things with your family, it's very hard to let your children sort of have their own decisions and their own sense of agency as well, right?
I just want to talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you're going to say to this question, but
go ahead.
How important is it to share values or have overlapping values with your partner?
Well, I would say that it certainly makes life easier. I think a lot of the times, like I've counseled a lot of couples, and okay, there's exceptions to the rule. There are people that we know for a fact, like if we had to assess them, there are people that have issues.
Yeah.
But on average, I think people are okay sometimes individually.
Yeah.
But you put them together and it's like water and oil. It just doesn't mix. Mm-hmm. But can you say water is bad and oil is bad? No, they both have a purpose.
Yeah.
But together, you won't make much out of that, right? So I feel like certainly if you have a similar blueprint, could it be financial, could it be just like with how you express your emotions and how you expect your emotions to be received and how you expect the other person to also express their emotions. If you're in alignment, it'll certainly make your relationship easier. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that you're not the same and you can't survive? No, but it'll probably require a lot of work, self-work, in what we're talking about now. Yeah. So I have worked with couples, others have. It is possible, like anything else. But certainly, yes, knowing oneself, I think there's a cliche about like love yourself first before you fall in love with someone else.
Yeah.
I think where that stems from is just, if you know yourself well, then I think, in one of the things in the relationship, a lot of the times, like, it's assumed, like, I'm not going to name gender, but like one will assume that the other should know that I wanted him or her to say that.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of the times it's like, either we don't even know ourselves what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I think we have to just be better communicators.
Yeah.
Like, if you know yourself well, and then you work on being able to say, you know what, I'm okay with who I am. So I think I should be able to communicate to the other who I am and what I need, right? So it's like it's very scaffolded, right? Like, first self-discovery, then self-acceptance, self-discovery, self-acceptance, and then self-improvement, and then sort of self with other, working well with other, and then being able to communicate what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost take it or leave it. I'm comfortable with who I am.
Yeah.
Let's hope this works.
Yeah.
Right? But this is what I need.
I do find though I could speak for myself, but I think we sometimes meet our partners early in the process of knowing ourselves.
Yes,
right?
You're right.
And I know in my own experience, my husband wanted me to improve in ways that in the end I was like, I want myself to improve in those same ways, which is what's awesome, I think, about a partner who pushes you to also be a better person.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, you can work it out together as well. Ideally, if we can raise our kids to discover themselves and who they are and give them opportunities early. Well, once they meet their partner, they can maybe have less issues, meeting the right person.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think, you're bringing up an important point. Like, most of us don't learn this from an early age. And so is there room to learn this once you're already coupled? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you need someone that at least will be in the same position as you, where we want to grow together.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you have a closed person, which was the example I was giving you before, they're closed, it's going to be very challenging for you to be able to be self-fulfilled and fulfilled generally with a person that just doesn't want to take part in that change process.
Yes.
You can be at different spaces, but at least that there's that openness.
100%.
So same, for example, it could be that your I don't know, like maybe a partner has expectations of his wife or her husband that come down to, for example, why my mom was this way or my dad was this way. Yeah. And when I'm talking about doing the cleaning, it's the same thing. Like, are those things that I really want, or are those things that I just sort of brought over but never consciously asked myself whether I wanted those things in the first place? Yeah. Maybe I don't need my wife to be exactly like my mom, and that's great, right? But
I also think no, your whole point about knowing what you want and then being able to communicate it well, it sounds so simple, but I think it's so much more complex. Yeah. Like because also what you want could evolve. Yeah. Of course. And on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then having the skills, communication skills, we don't learn them anywhere.
No, and this is also the fear of all those digital devices as well, right? Because they can be an asset, they can help us, but they can also get in the way of just the dialogue that we're doing now. This is also one of the reasons why as well, like, I love this aspect, this talking, this communicating, right? We can't lose this.
No.
But it's also making me think about something that I had before in my mind. I think it's the intuition. And that's one of the things, like, I really love everything technology that we have now, but the part, like the clinician in me is concerned about that the fear that we lose our intuition. You need to rely a little bit on your gut. Like, what do I feel? Like, and it's really just like, it's not something that's, sort of esoteric. It's just like, what am I feeling? What like thinking about what I'm thinking, that's valuable. That's really valuable. And I think nowadays when I see like the youth and most of us, even adults, like rely so much on technology to help us sort of like figure things out. But all the time, the fear is that we lose that capacity to be intuitive. Yeah. Because if I'm doing I was talking about self-discovery, self-reflection, that relies on my internal dialogue, me stopping, thinking, making connections, allowing myself that space. Make sure that we value this human intuition and that we try to nurture it in everything that we do on a daily basis, because it's a foundation, I think, of mental health.
Yeah. I also think we need to work against the tendencies to fill the dead space.
Yes.
It's
silence.
so easy. Yeah. Yes. Like sit
Yes.
be with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just thinking, it's just stopping and reflecting about yesterday, or reflecting about like how I started my day versus how I ended it. You know, I was saying before, like, okay, so where did it sidetrack? Like, was there something in my day that just changed my affect? I started my day well, like got my coffee in the car. Oh, it's that guy that, it could be that person that cut me off, you know, like, but like, what is it? What is it that what was the trigger? You know, how did I deal with it? You know, you know, like, what can I do differently next time?
Yeah.
Let me try. And instead of saying I was such an idiot for not doing that, okay, no, this was in the moment. This is where I went. What can I try to do differently next time? Almost was seeing it as an iterative process.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that I'm not the result of what I did today. It's a continuous thing. That's what's wonderful about life. You know, I'm not defined by my history. Like, I'm really defined by what I choose to do on a daily basis. Like, where do I show up or not for myself? If you show up for yourself, you're going to show up for others. So I think that's what I really want to encourage people. It sounds easier, like you said, than done, but it's a process. And we have to accept the small. You know, like, if I were to tell you, I gave you that example once, like, oh, you know, Lindsay, I'm not going to like start planning for my future. Like, I have little to invest right now. Like, you know, I have so little that it's no point that I invest. What would you tell them?
Oh, well,
you have to start somewhere, don't you? Because then the alternative is that you never save.
Well, I think this brings me to something that is a huge topic that we need to talk about, because I think it stands in the way of us being able to do well financially and in life.
Yeah.
Perfectionism.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
This whole
idea
right.
That's a good
of
segue.
This isn't the right time.
Yes.
I don't have enough. I'm not ready.
Yes. Or it's not good enough. It's just
not
a
good
little.
Enough,
yes.
You know, or I'm scared.
Yes.
I'm scared. And you taught me about the difference between real fear.
Yes.
And
perceived fear.
Perceived fear.
And your brain often can't tell them apart. So whether it's not a true threat or a real problem, if you perceive it to be a problem, it will react as though it was a real threat. And that's what's great about our brain at the same time, because it's reactive. But the thing is that, you know, we can teach our brain to see it differently. We can sort of like take the perceived threat and tone it down so that we don't react the same way. But you're right. Perfectionism is a great thing. If you have a perfectionistic surgeon, you're good, right? You want, in a certain case, or a dentist, whatever it is, like, you want it. It's a good thing. Yeah. But there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. Yeah. So if I am, for example, am a perfectionist person, I will tend to basically, you know, maximize the negative and minimize the positive. I'll tend to personalize a lot more. So emotional reasoning, like, oh, that, I bet you that person like intended on hurting me. So if you do that, it'll hurt a lot more than if you're like, oh, they probably just like were having a bad day. Right? You're externalizing it, right? Like, oh, they were having a bad day, versus like, oh, like I probably said something wrong. Like, you know, I probably showed like an image of myself that I didn't want to show. They're going to think I'm not professional based on what I'm wearing, whatever, right? This is you personalizing something external, right? So it's going to affect you much more. Too much of it, or excessive amounts of it, or excessive applications of it tires you down, because you can't be perfect all the time, right?
Yeah. It makes me think of two books.
Oh, yes.
That I've read.
Yes.
One a while ago, which was The Gifts of Imperfection.
Yes.
By Brene Brown. And I think that was like a bit of an unlocking for me, having been someone who has always kind of pushed against perfectionistic tendencies. And then more recently I read The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control, which I loved because it made me, or it helped me see perfectionism when it's adaptive.
Yes.
As super powerful.
Yes.
And then there's the maladaptive versions, which, I mean, it's a spectrum.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
anyone
it's
who
a continuum.
works in that continuum has experienced aspects of both. You try to stay in the adaptive as much as possible, but where the power can become control. Yeah. And I love hearing you talk about control and where control is useful. Yeah. But then where it can become problematic.
Yeah.
Like control, having that power
Yeah.
to achieve, to be out in the world, just like harnessing this superpower, which I think perfectionism can be. It really drives you.
Yeah.
I think we both have it.
Yes, we do. But I think it goes back to the very basic thing, the circle of control, right? What I have that's in my power, what I control. I can control my emotions, my thoughts, my reaction. Like someone says, "Oh, I just yelled. I couldn't control myself." No, technically you didn't control yourself. Like you lacked emotional control, but you have the ability to control. My need for control is basically rooted in insecurity, right? Like if you want to treat someone for anxiety that has chronic anxiety, you'll need to teach them to just let go a little bit more. You need to teach them to delegate. You need to teach them to accept that things won't be perfect. So really perfectionism at the root is this idea that I control everything. So whenever something doesn't go as planned, it's very difficult for someone that's perfectionistic because I take it as I did something wrong. Where in reality, there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. So, I think it's okay to strive to always do your best. But sometimes, even when you did your best, it doesn't amount to what you were expecting. And this is when perceiving the situation differently. A lot of the times it's just externalizing. Like it could be like I tell my kids, like, you studied really well. You studied the material, but maybe, it looks like the teacher used material that was outside of what was given for you to study. Or maybe sometimes it's like, yeah, you didn't study enough. Like sometimes it is our fault, right? And that's really, really difficult. But I think, one of the ways the danger is that, perfectionistic individuals who become perfectionistic parents, can then obviously in their tendencies, there's an aspect that's genetic, but a lot of it is modeled, right? I didn't realize that the way I was treating myself was actually also very formative for my children. So I came to realize I was cool with them a lot of the times, but I was really hard on myself, and I would sort of, I guess, model that, like say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just got this, or like, oh, I'm so not good, I'm gonna have to try again. And so them seeing me treat myself that way sort of became, if mom does that, I admire her, so I guess I should do that too. So vicariously by observing myself. And so I came to realize that I also have to be careful about how I treat myself. And this goes back to the beginning, whether you're a parent or not, you have to really take care of yourself, because eventually, it kind of goes down to, intergeneration, 2 generation. This is why I'm so compelled by this whole perinatal thing, right? Because if we can teach this awareness of self before you become parents, well, even better, right? Because then you'll be aware of how these patterns pass on from one generation to the next.
It's really powerful work. And self-compassion, I mean, years ago, I read an article about self-compassion, which made me realize that it's not about being soft. It's actually self-compassion unlocks the ability to grow.
Absolutely.
Like it's about potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Most perfectionist person will view a lot of the time self-compassion as a potential for mediocrity or mediocrity, like d'être médiocre, like that not being good enough. It's like kind of like it's like a step ladder.
It's like an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but as you just perfectly said, like it's the antidote to shame, to guilt. It's what makes us go from being, again, like our feet, sort of fused in concrete to like moving forward, right? It's the essence of resilience, really. To be resilient is to be self-compassionate.
Fear, avoidance. I mean, we've talked about these before. They're such key obstacles, I think, in allowing us to address important things in our lives, knowing ourselves, and just unlocking this ability to grow and do better. Could you... I mean, avoidance. Avoidance is a really big one.
It's the go-to when we're anxious.
Yeah.
And when we're confronted.
I mean, financially, fear. Sometimes people do have things to fear.
Yes.
when it comes to their finances,
Yes.
right? And sometimes this fear is artificial, like you say,
Yep.
right? But leads to avoidance.
Yeah.
What would you say to women, or really anyone,
Yep.
to allow people to help people do better
Yeah.
in this area?
Well, I think again, like we avoid usually because it's a self-defense. So I'm feeling threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And threatened could be like, I feel like I'm a bad person. So guilt, shame. I feel like I'm less good than other people. We're falling into the same theme that we've talked about leading up to this, right? So avoidance is just that. I can't cope with that.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And I just retreat. I just avoid. We avoid what we fear.
Right.
And so the alternative to that is it's very simple. It's hard, but it's simple. Is that instead of avoiding, you just have to stay there. You just have to face it. And sometimes it's facing that you've made a lot of mistakes. Like avoidance will be like, no, I'm fine. Like financially, I'm fine. But at one point you just have to say, wow, I've really been really bad with my money, or I've really made some poor choices.
Cue self-compassion.
Yes, absolutely. So they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So this is when, you can't really improve something if there's not the recognition that it requires improvement, right? So, and usually because you don't want to come to terms with it, you avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the best ways, I think, you asked me, how do you help people? I think a lot of the times, like, you put two perfectionistic individuals together, there's going to be a lot of blame, right? And that's the thing, we self-blame, but we tend to also blame others. That's the thing. Like, it just hurts so much to blame ourselves, and we can't sort of go from a place of self-compassion. What's the next best thing? I want to avoid feeling distressed. I'm going to blame others. It's usually de facto, right? Yeah. So this is why I think, by just also relying on self-compassion, I'm probably going to be a more pleasant individual, because I'm going to probably blame others less. But also, like, people will accuse us of like always like avoiding. Oh, you're avoiding. Either you're avoiding or you're displacing the blame. Like, so I think we'll reduce the incidence or relying on avoidance if we just, again, like, go from a place of self-compassion, go from it like it's a process. This is not a dead end. I don't end here.
Yeah.
Maybe like, yes, maybe I have to come to face the music and say, yes, this side of me is not how I want to be.
Yeah.
But it's not the end. Like, it's just the beginning of who I want to become.
I think it's a process.
It's such a process.
It never ends, actually.
If you don't want it to.
Right.
Right. It ends when,
but then there's like a new awareness of something else that I could improve on.
Yeah.
I think once you get into it, it becomes fun and just something that you can, like, because there's no end to the potential. Like, there's no.
Yes. And I think that's, again, it's like the perception. If I see it as, that's it, like, this is who I am.
Right.
There's nothing, I'll never be able to change. That's a very like threatening thought, right? So of course I'm going to avoid. Of course I'm going to, some people avoid, some people backlash, some people get angry, some people blame others. I was saying before, there's many different ways that we cope with feeling like we're not where we want to be, or maybe we're so I think the first place is like, of course, seeing it as a process. Is it easy? No, but like, like if you've engaged on a health, I don't know, for whatever reason, we have a friend that, right now got some news that he needs to really change his eating habits and his exercise habits, because it's a health scare. Like that person needs to, and all of a sudden that person is doing that, right? So and now is realizing that I could have done that all these years before the scare, but the scare is what wakes me up, right? So I think we can sort of tell ourselves today, like, I don't need a major life change. Major life crises, we can use them. Certainly for many people, these have been like, a springboard for something else. But we could also, if we want to, and we're at the right place, see any life events as being, I'm not going to wait till there's a major life event to do that. Yeah. I'm going to do it now. But again, it really, and that's why gratitude also plays in that as well. Like, whatever little step I do, they kind of go hand in hand. Gratitude, self-compassion. Okay, great. I make a step forward. Gratitude. Wow, I made a step forward. Yeah. The perfectionism, it's just a little step. It's okay. I'm very grateful for what I did. Yeah. Next step. That's why they kind of go hand in hand. And that's what makes me move. And we're very sort of like critical with ourselves, pointing out what we need to change. But then once we do an improvement, we minimize it. So we don't celebrate it. Celebrate, like treat yourself, go do something that's fun, that's kind for you. Do like reward yourself, right? And oftentimes we wait for the world to do that for us. I tell people like it wouldn't be great, but the reality is that we're not always going to have our cheerleaders, and maybe they should, but they're not. But then you're there, you showed up, so you be your own cheerleader. You encourage yourself, you treat yourself to something nice. You are always there. Wherever you'll be, you go, you'll be. So you can always count on yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, you just gave so many, I think, really important pieces of advice. And is there anything else when we want to leave women with, one thing to think differently about in their lives? I mean, a lot of that, I think, is gratitude, self-compassion.
Yeah. And
showing up for ourselves.
And yes. And I think, the reality is that if we show up for yourself, if you're a woman that is in a good place, you're going to be able to elevate others. Remember, we talked about that as well. Like, I think a lot of the times, because women, we have to fight for a lot of the times for like certain spots or certain places that maybe, we tend to be outnumbered. When we get there, we're so in fear of what we've achieved that, for example, sometimes maybe we're not as prone to elevate others as a result of this. So I think if we can just really work on ourselves, we're comfortable, we're where we're at. Maybe we're above, maybe we're below someone else, but we're exactly where we're supposed to be. I think we're going to be at a place where we can leverage all those qualities, not feel threatened by what we don't have, sort of be able to work with other women that are also strong women, and then benefit from their entourage, from their skill set, and really just become people that are just happier as a result, right? Women that are strong. So I wish I could tell women, you're stronger than you know. And I think just work towards getting to a place where you discover for yourself just how amazing you are. Give yourself a chance. That's what I would leave them with.
Thank you for listening to You Belong in the Room, a podcast from Powership. If you enjoyed what you heard today, found it resonated, feel free to share it with someone you care about, and you can follow the show so you don't miss new episodes. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And to learn more about Powership, feel free to check out the website, powershipcollective.com. There you can find out more about the Women's Powership Symposium as well, and follow us on Instagram at Powership Collective.